And third, personally, what is it that is making him do all these special things for the Russians?
Well, the timing and the importance of the conversation has changed in light of this Washington Post report. At the onset, what do you believe from what you've heard so far about the reports from the Washington Post and the response from the White House?
No, may I first say, when you extended the invitation to have this town hall a couple of weeks ago, little did we know that the FBI director would be fired, and we thought, oh my goodness, that's going to change the town hall. Little did we know we would have a matter of this consequence. As you may know, I've for over 20 years been a member of the Intelligence Committee, or the Gang of Eight, for longer than anybody actually in history. And our work there, well, we have some differences over time, has never been political, and hopefully this won't be as well. But from what we have heard, and again, the facts are what are important. From what we have heard, this is a very serious matter. This is a code word source, highly classified information revealed to an adversarial country, and to do so in a way, they're very sophisticated on intelligence. The Russians have never stopped. Putin was head of the KGB. This is what they do. And
the concern would be what exactly, if the report is true?
Well, that even if the president didn't reveal a source or method, that what he did reveal could be traced very directly to a source and method.
And what would that mean? Well,
that endangers a couple of things. It endangers the person or persons, the activity. It could undermine an operation that could be saving lives, and it undermines the trust that we would have with our allies, our liaison, what they call liaison relationship, that's intelligence relationship that we have with other countries that they share carefully, not expecting the President of the United States to be wittingly, and that would be unfortunate, or unwittingly, that would be unfortunate.
Do you share the concern that if this is all true, it might accelerate a time frame by ISIS? We've heard that from different security experts. Do you agree with that?
Of course, yes. No, you never want the target to know they're the target, or that you're onto them in a certain way. And that does, and that has accelerated their actions in the past. So now, that's another danger.
Very important for reporting purposes. The Washington Post has their headline. They say it's well-sourced. The White House came out quickly and aggressively in the form of General H.R. McMaster, the National Security Advisor, of course, for President Trump. He gave a rejection of the story. Let me play it for you now.
Okay. Hey, good evening, everybody. I just have a brief statement for the record. There's nothing that the President takes more seriously than the security of the American people. The story that came out tonight, as reported, is false. The President and the Foreign Minister reviewed a range of common threats to our two countries, including threats to civil aviation. At no time were intelligence sources or methods discussed. And the President did not disclose any military operations that were not already publicly known. Two other senior officials who were present, including the Secretary of State, remember the meeting the same way and have said so. Their on-the-record accounts should outweigh those of anonymous sources. And I was in the room. It didn't happen.
General, this was not.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Now, obviously, the general did not take any questions. The Washington Post says they stand by their story. Are you satisfied with what you heard from the White House?
No. What the general said that was very telling to me is the President did not reveal anything that was not in the public domain.
In terms of operations?
Yeah, he said in terms of, in the, what did he say, the public domain, or
yes,
in the public whatever?
Yes, publicly known military operations.
The fact is that anyone who has anything to do with intelligence, the one thing you always say is, I cannot confirm or deny that that is true. So the President could be saying something that's in the public domain, but confirming it to the Russians in a way that is very dangerous. As I say, if it was on purpose, that would be terrible. And if it was not, if it was accidental, that would be very terrible, too.
Well, all right, so let's talk about the impact of this on several different levels. The first one is, it seems as though General McMaster was saying the president didn't say anything about who was giving us this information, which is a primary concern. You don't want to reveal a source or an ally. However, that's not what the Washington Post is reporting. They're saying that he gave highly classified information about the what, about what the threat is, what may be done, what may be the response. Are those different in your mind as well?
Well, the fact is that I may not give you somebody's name, but if I describe a certain circumstance, you can engineer back and figure out by the process of elimination what the source or the method is. Sources and methods are very protected, and you don't. The President of the United States is not likely to come out and say, Chris Cuomo is the person, but if he describes a situation that, by the process of elimination, endangers you, that's a bad thing. We have an expression, there are signs up in the intelligence rooms up there, it said, loose lips can sink ships. And it is really true. It's these, shall we say, accidental, I don't know what word to describe for the president, and this messy approach to intelligence that is very endangering. Our intelligence people around the world are super patriots. They work very hard to protect the American people. When I first went on intelligence, it was about force protection. In case we were going into a military operation, how we avoid it in the first place, have the proper intelligence so that our military can succeed, and quickly. Then it's expanded to all kinds of things, terrorism, still force protection, very important. But what they and their families sacrifice is so much, and we have to have so much appreciation for what they do. And we cannot have the President of the United States being casually loose-lipped about confirming something, even if it's in the public domain, to an adversarial nation.
And by that, you mean Russia and who he was meeting with there. In terms of getting to the bottom of it, have you reached out to the White House? Do you believe there is a need for the Gang of Eight to convene and find out from any existing transcript what was said, what it means, what must be done?
Well, you know, I'd hope that we'll be able to proceed in a very nonpartisan way on this. This is about the security of our country, the oath we take to protect and defend. This is as serious as it gets. Our first responsibility to protect the American people. The intelligence community is a very important part of that. And this really needs to be addressed. Now, my understanding from the report is they talked about something that had to do with aviation. And they've now scheduled an aviation briefing, classified briefing for Thursday. Maybe totally coincidental, but nonetheless, they've scheduled an aviation briefing. But up until now, we had not received word from the White House that this had happened.
How do you read that?
I think there's really, they're disorganized, it's pretty disorganized. I thought that the statement of McMaster's was sad for him to be able to come out and speak in that way.
Why?
Well, because you have to know that to say nothing I said, the president said, was anything that wasn't in the public domain, completely opened the door to, well, what's that? What's that? But the other part of it is, and I think it's really important, this is very serious business with, I'm going to say business, activity with other countries. What was revealed in that is highly classified code word source. This is about as high a level of classification as it is. This is nothing casual, just stamped secret because you just assume people didn't talk about it. This is dangerous. And I would hope that it would be a lesson to the president to have his daily intelligence briefings so he understands the connection from one report to the next about how thorough everyone else is on this, how important our liaison relationships are about information, intelligence we share with other countries, and that he has a higher respect for what the intelligence community does.
So you have what it means about the president and what it means for the president. The first question, do you believe that if this is true, what is reported in the Washington Post, that this goes to the competency of Donald Trump to be president?
I think it goes to the preparedness or lack thereof of President Donald Trump to be president. I mean, this is sloppy, and he can correct it, but we have to know more about it.
How does he correct it if he already told them the information?
No, I'm going to say he can't do it again. I mean, this can't be but I don't know, did he want, let's just put this in context. He's meeting with the Russian foreign minister. Usually the president meets with heads of state. He's meeting with the Russian foreign minister 2 days before he fired the director of the FBI with some suspicion that he did so because he didn't like, in his own words, the Russian investigation. 2 days after that firing was the day when the director of the FBI was supposed to address the Intelligence Committee with the Global Threats Report. May 11th is the day of Global Threats Report. So why would he fire him 2 days before he's going to be making this very important presentation with other intelligence and security people to the Congress of the United States? What did he not want them to hear?
What is your suspicion?
And then, at the request of Putin, he meets with the foreign minister.
Do you think that there's a correlation
has loose
between
lips,
those two?
Well, it's, as Yogi Berra said, it's too much of a coincidence to be a coincidence. There's just something wrong with this picture. All at the same time as people are saying, and you know, this you have to be careful because this is its own incident, but it's about Russia. And every day I ask the question, what do the Russians have on Donald Trump? Financially, politically, or personally, that he's always catering to them.
Well, that goes to the second question. What does this mean for the president? Members of your party have been very critical. They are using this as proof of his not being up to the job. Republicans, Senator Corker, used the phrase downward spiral for the White House. Do you see a level of crisis, or do you just see sloppiness and getting their sea legs in a new administration?
Well, in my work, and this is over 20 years in intelligence and a long time on the ethics committee, where we make judgments about people's behavior, it's only about the facts, the rules, and the law. And so we have to see what the facts are in this situation and how far did he go in what this was about. But I don't, you know, I think that in some ways I'm sorry that this is also public because it is very, very, very damaging. It's very damaging. But the fact is, it is public, and the president has to answer for this. We expect to have some briefings in the Congress about this. I would be on the Gang of Eight, the 4 leaders of the committee, House and Senate, Democratic and Republican, and the 4 leaders of the Congress, and we expect to have it soon. But again, to try to take us to a safer place, the president did not do that.
What do you need to hear from President Trump? Is this about an apology? Is this about a recognition of a need to do things differently? Do you expect to hear anything at all?
Well, I would hope that the president would say, since this all centers around Russia, let the investigation of the Russian connection continue. You cannot separate this behavior of trying to please the Russians from what is this? What is this? So we have a call. Over 75% of the American people support a commission, an outside commission, not the Congress, to do the investigation. I think the Congress can do some investigating, or a special prosecutor, an outside counsel. But this might be the place where the Republicans stop hiding the truth from the American people about the Russian connection.
Well, that is a good point to stop our one-on-one conversation, and let's bring in the audience, because the idea of what will our leaders in Washington of all political stripes do to ensure the safety of the American people. So let's bring in Jody Pratt. She's a stay-at-home mom from Washington, D.C., and she's got a question about checks and balances. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks. I've lost faith in the willingness of the Republican-led Congress to stand up to President Trump, despite allegations of colluding with Russia, self-dealing, and conflicts of business interest. In this current hyper-partisan environment, can we have any assurances that our system of checks and balances is still working and that Congress is holding him to account?
Well, there were concerns about checks and balances before this issue came out tonight. This is in its own place. I mean, this is a very discreet, indiscreet happening. On the checks and balances, there was very serious concern about the firing of Director Comey in the manner in which it happened. But you know what? You always have to be hopeful. When we had the majority and President Bush was president, we worked with him. I mean, what could be worse than the war in Iraq? But despite that, we worked very closely with President Bush on many issues. The biggest energy bill in the history of our country, PEPFAR, the AIDS drugs. He wanted PEPFAR. We wanted it big. We had our agreement on that. The list goes on and on of so many things that we did working with President Bush. He was one of the best presidents in terms of immigration in our country. His father was too. All of our presidents have been, except President Trump. But so the party, we have a responsibility to the American people to find common ground where we can. When President Obama was president, the Republicans made clear when they took the majority, the most important thing that we can do is to make sure he doesn't succeed. But again, we can't follow that example.
So what do you say?
We want to work together. If it's an infrastructure bill, if it's legislation for work-home balance in terms of issues that relate to family leave, et cetera, some of the things that he said in the campaign, a tax reform, simplification, more fairness in our tax code. Not that we've seen that from him, but nonetheless to strive to get to that place. Because we have that responsibility to the American people. We always have to strive for that, and we did not make any declaration against him that the Republicans made against President Obama.
But what do you say about the practical effect of some of your members? Let's say most recently Al Green, okay, said this is time for impeachment. That word is getting thrown around.
Yeah.
Do you say to your members of your party, slow down? Because that is not a way to bridge any kind of divide with the Republicans.
No, but it's a reflection of what they're hearing in their own constituencies. But that's not, some of that is picked up this past week. We've been out of session. I'll see them tomorrow when they come back. But they know I don't subscribe to that. In other words, again, if you're talking about impeachment, you're talking about what are the facts. Not, I don't like him and I don't like his hair and I think, what are the facts? I don't like what he said about this or that. What are the facts that you would make a case on? What are the rules that he may have violated? If you don't have that case, you're just participating in more hearsay. And that's not the basis of what we need. And we owe the American people some stability in all of this. This is the time where he's supposed to be having his honeymoon. What a marriage. The honeymoon of his. So we watch and see what he's going to do, what is his vision, how is he going to implement it, and the rest. And it's been sloppy.
All right, we're about 20 minutes in. Let's take a break. We have a lot more audience questions about a lot of topics, including the breaking news. All right, welcome back to the CNN Town Hall. We have Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi on such an important night, given the breaking news. We want to get back to our audience questions. We have Matthew Smolars. He's a history professor from Jenkintown, Pennsylvania. And you have a question about Russian influence.
I do. Good evening, Leader Pelosi.
Good evening, Roger.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
My question is there any evidence that the political rhetoric of the Trump administration has been influenced by the views and practices of the Putin government?
Well, good question, and thank you for asking it. One of the concerns that we have is that Russia is an adversary to the United States. And yet when the president became president-elect, he was putting Putin on a pedestal, and he was questioning whether we should even have sanctions against Russia for their aggression in Ukraine and Crimea, et cetera, and questioning the undermining the relationship we have with NATO, which is our transatlantic friendship for security. And it was like, why on earth is he undermining our allies and praising Putin? And so that's one of the things that we want to see about the investigation, because it relates to, if they're a bit, as I said earlier, financial. What is the financial connection? Political. They did, it's an absolute fact, disrupt our election by hacking and leaking. The question is, was there collusion? And third, personally, what is it that is making him do all these special things for the Russians? You only know that if you're basing it on fact and not just rumor and hearsay, if you have the investigation. And that's why we're saying, let's just find out the truth. Let the chips fall where they may. And if he has nothing to hide, he shouldn't be opposing, nor should my Republican colleagues in Congress be opposing the release of his tax returns, any of the investigation into other aspects of the Trump-Russia connection. And that's why when something like this comes up, it's like predictable almost, sadly.
And then you have, obviously, the connection to what happened with the dismissal of the director of the FBI. We have a question about that from the audience. Jake Lee, small business owner from West Hollywood, California. Thank you for joining us. What's your question?
Hi, Jake.
Hello. Good evening, Madam Leader.
Thank you.
Before the election on November 8th, your side of the aisle were asking for the former head of the FBI to resign. Mm-hmm. Now that he has been let go, why the sudden and selective outrage from your side of the aisle?
Well, I appreciate that. Some people were asking him to be let go. I said I thought it wasn't a good, he wasn't well suited to the heat that comes with the job, but I never said he should be fired. And for the President of the United States to fire somebody with his own self-admission that he didn't like, he was tired of the Russia-Trump probe, is distressing. It's distressing. We believe in the FBI as being an independent law enforcement agency to be respected and not to be fired by the president because he's tired of an investigation they're doing. And that's really what it was, the nature and the timing of it. If he had these concerns about how Hillary Clinton was treated, he could have let him go a long time ago, not 2 days before he was supposed to do the global threat assessment that may have included Russia.
The window into potential motivations before the president gave his interview and basically said that everything we'd been told by the White House was not so, was a paragraph about how the director of the FBI, James Comey, had told him on 3 occasions that he was not a subject of the investigation. Do you believe that those conversations took place?
Well, I believe that the president putting in that in a letter of dismissal, but thanking him for saying I'm not, was weird. That was really weird. We're talking weird. And that weird means what? Highly unusual, inappropriate for that. And why is he doing this? In the same way as I thought that the memo from the Deputy Attorney General was not I'm not disagreeing factually with some of the things that he said about the behavior of vis-a-vis Hillary Clinton, but to go on and on about entitling it, restoring the reputation of the FBI. Well, that wasn't what the president asked him, make a case against Comey, and that's what he did. But he did it in a way that was not prosecutorial. It was more like, I think I'll do an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal. And it was a very, I felt sorry for Rosenstein, as I felt sorry for McMaster. It's like, what? This is not professional. This is beneath your dignity of the service that you have both given to our country, to have the kinds of statements that they made.
Speaking about
but
service,
your question is a good one. Thank you.
Speaking about service to the country, let's bring in retired Colonel Emily Buckman. We want to thank you for your service. She's a member of the military, and she has a question about North Korea. You and your husband served and were deployed, yes? Well, thank you to both.
Pelosi, thank you so much for spending the evening with us tonight. As a 26-year veteran, as Chris mentioned, having served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and actually having served when General McMaster was in Afghanistan at the same time, I have the utmost respect for him.
Wonderful.
He is a man of integrity. So when he says what he says, I believe what he says. And that's from 26 years. But I can tell you that having been in the military, there is no room for divisiveness or division when you're talking about national security. And given that and the importance of unity when you're fighting, or when you're fighting countries like ISIS or the ISIS regime, and also when you look at North Korea and the threat that they represent, I think we have to really lean on your experience and with the intelligence community, with leading in the Congress, to go across party lines and make things better. So I'm just looking to you on how you're doing that. And given your experience, instead of being divisive and just creating division, how are you changing that story for us?
Thank you, Colonel, for your service and your husband's, for your family's patriotism. What I said I was sorry about the general, and I agree with you. I've seen him in Afghanistan. I know of his great service to our country. But all I said was, he said one sentence that left the door open. He didn't say anything that wasn't in the public domain. So that kept him honest and left the door open for us to look further. I've been to North Korea, by the way. I'm one of the few members of Congress that have been to Pyongyang as a member of the Intelligence Committee a number of years ago. You're playing with fire when you mess with them without a real plan, without listening to our military, who, by the way, we're so proud of, and advocate the use of force as a last resort, even with the president cutting the State Department budget 30%, General Mattis said, I'm going to have more ammunition. We have to have our diplomacy as part of our national security. So in terms of these subjects, you're absolutely right. We take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution and, of course, the American people, and we have to try to do that in the most nonpartisan way. I do not, though, think it's inappropriate for us to object to the militarization of our foreign policy, to cut diplomacy, increase the defense budget without a mission. What is the mission? If we need this money, we're all there for it, but show us the mission. Or is this just to cut investments in the alleviation of poverty, the eradication of disease, lowering the fury of despair that exists in some places that is fertile territory for terrorist recruitment and the rest? So we have to have balance, and I think we do. I think we will have bipartisan cooperation to fight that budget cut on the State Department, and I think you would be pleased to see the collaboration that happens in the Congress in terms of respecting the work of our men and women in uniform. That's one of our, we talk about honoring the vision of our founders, respecting the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform, and recognizing the aspirations of our children. That is our purpose there. That is what guides us. The
Colonel put her finger on a very important issue, though, which is how do we bridge that gap? Yeah. How do we get more out of Washington? That affects political culture, but also the impact on big issues like health care. Let's take a break.